Whilst Frank Fritz were given the boot from American Pickers in March 2020, fans were blindsided, however. That become only a drizzle before the real hurricane hit, because in September 2024, information of his passing dispatch dripples through the collectors. International as heartbreaking as his death was, it wasn't even the maximum startling element rumors about Frank's final words sent chills down the spines of individuals who heard them, and simply, when it seemed just like the shock couldn't get any heavier. His property discovered a few something so brilliant it left everybody confused, but earlier than we dive into the discoveries that left every person reeling, permits take a second to remember one of the maximum passionate collectors the sector has. Ever regarded, you notice Frank Fritz got here into the global on October 11, 1963 in Davenport, Iowa, with a natural curiosity that set him aside. While most kids his age have been chasing fly balls and tearing via the present-day comic books, Frank turned into chasing records. If something had a tail, no matter how small or insignificant it regarded, he wanted to aware of it. Old coins, rusty beer, cans, discarded stamps, even razor blades that had lengthy outlived their usefulness. He believed each item had a beyond a purpose, a place in a person's lifestyles before touchdown right here, and he wanted to recognize each detail as he grew. So did his ardor. He went from pocket-sized collectibles to bigger treasures, motorcycles, dirt bikes, and uncommon memorabilia that carried the weight of history on their wiped-out surfaces. Flea markets have become his battleground property income, his playground. If there was an old barn off a forgotten highway, full of relics from the past, Frank changed into the guy knocking on the door, prepared to dig through the dirt to maximum humans. It became simply an bizarre interest to Frank. It turned into a calling, but right here's in which matters took an unexpected flip. He didn't dive right into the world of antiques, rather, lifestyles pulled him in a specific route. For almost 25 years, he labored as a hearth inspector in Iowa. It was a Severin-nonsense process, one which required an eye for detail, precision, and a dedication to keeping humans safe. But no matter how a great deal time he spent checking fireplace codes and examining buildings, his passion for gathering in no way flickered out. In fact, his job handiest introduced fuel to the fire. Every day he stepped into old firehouses, abandoned warehouses, and forgotten buildings, places brimming with hid gems, anticipating a person like him to convey them back into the light. It's when he located himself, amassing firehouse memorabilia, helmets with soot-stained leather-based vintage, fireplace alarms that, as soon as rang through the chaos, extinguishers that had visible their fair percentage of action. Frank hunted all of them down. It wasn't long before he realized he changed onto something bigger than just a non-public collection. Those relics were not just fascinating, they'd real value, so he began buying and selling, slowly turning his passion into a facet business soon sufficient. The idea of turning his passion right into a career began creeping in. At this point, he had spent years working a steady task. However, deep down, he knew wherein. His heart became taking walks away from a strong process wasn't clean. However, the pull of his actual ardor changed into stronger, so he took the bounce. He opened Frank's Finessa, small vintage store, focusing on firemen's tools and rare collectibles. At first it turned into only a modest step in the direction of something new, but what he didn't understand turned into that little save was the foundation of a career that would soon catapult him into a world of treasure hunting journey, and ultimately the sort of fame he never noticed coming earlier. Then American Pickers made Frank Fritz a familiar face. He became just a man with an eye for hidden treasures and a love for the joys of the quest. However, Frank wasn't alone on this ardor. Any other Iowa local, Mike Wolf, had the equal obsession. They failed to start off as nice pals, however their shared love for choosing introduced them together through the years. Mike had the big vision. He noticed picking as greater than just a hobby. It changed into a way of lifestyles that would be turned into something large. Even as Frank became happy jogging his Save Frank's finds, Mike became busy filming his treasure-looking adventure, pitching a TV show to each person who would pay attention. It took a few convincing. However, in the end, Frank signed on. What started out as men hitting the street in seek of forgotten relics changed into AFAC TV juggernaut. When American Pickers premiered on the History Channel in 2010, it struck gold over 1 million people tuned in for the primary episode, making it one of the network's most success debuts. However, the show's magic wasn't just inside the antiques, it became in the chemistry among Mike and Frank. Their pleasure wasn't scripted, and their friendship was as actual because it got that they had already spent years constructing relationships inside the antique world, earning appreciate for his or her fair offers and deep expertise. Now with cameras rolling, they were taking audiences along for the journey. Mike had the enterprise instincts, always looking for the next massive price ticket item. Frank, alternatively, was the coronary heart of the operation he had, a manner of creating people experience at ease, turning worrying negotiations into friendly conversations he wasn't just about. The cash he actually cared approximately their stories at the back of the gadgets they observed. That authenticity made him a fan favorite, whether he turned into geeking out over a vintage motorbike or sharing a with Adila visitors, saw a person who cherished what he did for over a decade. American Pickers become a must-at week after week. Frank and Mike hit the road digging via barns, garages, and junkyards in seek of hidden treasures, with Danielle Colby keeping down the citadel at antique archaeology. The trio had a dynamic that just worked. They weren't just business companions. They had been friends chasing their passion together, but no road journey lasts all the time, and for Frank, the journey that, when regarded limitless, took a flip nobody. Anticipated the primary signs that something was off with American Pickers failed to spark instantaneous concern. Frank Fritz's ultimate look aired in March 2020. However, given the unpredictability of the sector on the time, most viewers assumed he'd be lower back before lengthy. What they did not realize was that behind the curtain, Frank become dealing with a sequence of struggles that might in the end change the whole lot. Frank Fritz by no means talked an awful lot, approximately his private struggles. However, over time, some matters became not possible to ignore for years. Lovers observed his weight going up and down. A few figured it turned into just a part of aging, while others concerned something became wrong. Eventually, Frank revealed that he had Crohn's disorder, a chronic situation that assaults the digestive gadget. It's painful, unpredictable, and onerous at first. Frank attempted to control it by way of sticking to a strict diet, which helped him lose 65 valvobib. But Crohn's is not something you may just restore. It's something you need to combat through every day. The ache, fatigue, and uncertainty have been constantly there, but he no way permit it stop him from doing what he loved. But fitness issues weren't the handiest element. Weighing on him, fame, adjustments, things, and for Frank it wasn't continually for the better. While American Pickers took off, lifestyles were given loads more complicated. Unexpectedly, he wasn't just a man looking for antiques. He became a reality TV megastar anywhere he went. Humans recognized him, expected him to be the same fun, short-witted guy they noticed on TV. What they did not see turned into the strain that got here with it. Frank admitted that being inside the spotlight made him disturbing, and over the years it took a toll. However, it was in 2020 that the whole lot absolutely fell aside. Frank's health were given so terrible that he needed to undergo principal returned surgical treatment, and sadly, it wasn't a minor matter. We are speak me, approximately 185 stitches. 2 rods in his spine and a recovery technique that might take months. On top of that, he turned into fighting private demons, which includes addiction. Initially, his absence seemed like a brief destroy time to heal and get returned on his FT, but as American Pickers moved into its 21st season without him, fanatics commenced asking questions. Then in July 2021, Mike Wolf made it reliable Frank wasn't coming lower. Back, Mike released the assertion, saying he'd pass over Frank and wanted him the first rate, but relatively. Frank didn't purchase it. In an interview he referred to as Mike's phrases hollow and dropped a bombshell that greatly surprised enthusiasts. At some point of his complete recovery, Mike had by no means as soon as called toe check on him. Decades of working together and not a single telephone name Frank made it clean that their dating had never been as close as people concept on display screen, that they had chemistry, but off-screen matters were different. He believed Mike had been searching out an opportunity to push him out of the show for a long time, and with Frank out of fee. That opportunity finally arrived. Lovers were taken. A back how may want to 2 guys who had spent years touring, giggling, and building a hit display together simply disintegrate. Like that, as anticipated, the internet exploded with debates. Some blame Mike for turning his lower back on Frank, while others pointed to Frank's non-public struggles as the actual reason for his departure in the meantime. Mike answered by insisting that everyone on the display cared about Frank, but also suggested that obtaining him back heading in the right direction had been a mission the truth has continually changed into more complicated than any one facet of the tale. A friend of both guys later discovered that years of running together long days, excessive pressure filming schedules, and the pressure of retaining a heat show going had worn them down. Upload in Frank's health battles and private struggles, and the cracks of their friendship have become not possible to ignore. The buddy defined it as a state of affairs, wherein both men truly wished area adamage from the daily grind that had consumed them for over a decade. So whilst you think about it, this wasn't about 1 second of betrayal or a dramatic fallout. It became about longtime colleagues who, after years of working aspect via side, had grown apart below the burden of fame strain and personal struggles for fanatics. It became a hard pill to swallow. The display had made it experience like Frank and Mike might always be a crew, but actual existence advised a very distinct story even after stepping far from TV. Frank stayed deeply involved in the antiques world. He understood that the manner humans accrued changed into changing with greater customers, turning to online purchasing. He adapted, launching his very own digital storefront and the usage of social media to connect to creditors round the sector. For Frank, it wasn't approximately staying relevant. It became about retaining the spirit of choosing alive in a new era. But if there was one factor Frank loved just as plenty as antiques, it became bikes. His passion for motorcycles commenced young. Considered one of his earliest big purchases was a 1964 Harley-Davidson, a motorbike that probably had his parents concerned but cemented his love for antique rides. Over time, he constructed an outstanding series filling an entire barn with rare and traditional bikes, and he did not just gather them, he shared his expertise. In 2013, he wrote A Way to Pick Out Vintage Bikes, a book that broke down everything from recognizing hidden gemstones to keeping classic bikes. He even threw in a phase in antique toy motorcycles, proving that this love for collecting wasn't just about the large stuff it turned into. Approximately the info, the craftsmanship, and the testimonies at the back of each piece, beyond his personal collection. Frank made it a factor to deliver lower back to the antiques community. He teamed up with different specialists to host antique galas, exhibitions, and live events, helping connect creditors and dealers with the same ardor he also co-authored American Picker's Guide to Choosing, presenting enthusiasts a deeper look into the arena of selecting. What made Frank special wasn't simply his eye for a incredible discover. It changed into the way he made records feel thrilling, whether he became talking approximately a rusty gasoline pump or a forgotten toy from the bot 50s. He had a way of bringing the past to existence. To him, selecting wasn't just about shopping for and promoting. It turned into approximately keeping tales, live one treasure at a time. And while maximum human being's notion that his feud with Mike would retain for years everything could exchange after tragedy struck in July 2022. Frank's lifestyles took a devastating turn. He suffered a chief stroke at home in Davenport, Iowa. By way of the time help arrived, he changed into unresponsive, and the scenario became essential. He was rushed to the health facility, wherein doctors worked to stabilize him. However, the harm became excessive. Fanatics who had accompanied his adventure for years anxiously waited for updates, hoping he'd pull through. After nearly a month inside the health center, he moved to a rehab facility to start the lengthy, onerous street to recuperation. A stroke does not simply knock you down, it can eliminate everything you as soon as took, with no consideration for Frank, who had spent years journeying the country, putting offers and residing lifestyles on his own phrase. Unexpectedly wanting help with simple responsibilities become a cruel reality he should no longer take care of. Himself in a courtroom had to step in, appointing a dad or mom to address his daily needs and a bank to supervise. His price range, the independence he'd usually valued, turned into abruptly out of reach. And then there was the value his clinical care reportedly racked up $29,000 a month various that made it painfully clean just how much he had lost. But if there has been one unexpected outcome, it became how the stroke modified matters between him and Mike. In May 2023, something happened that nobody noticed. Frank requested to look Mike after years of distance, bitterness, and unspoken phrases. The two ultimately sat down face to face a chum who changed into their later shared, that it become emotional. Each man had been in tears, Mike advised Frank, something that hit deep no one may want to ever update him for the first time in years. It wasn't about the show, the business, or who turned into right or wrong. It turned into about the friendship they had built, lengthy, before American Pickers become even an idea. Simply two men who loved the thrill of the search traveling, returned roads finding forgotten treasures and sharing a dream after the whole thing that bond becomes till there perhaps buried underneath years of resentment, however, by no means sincerely broken by using September 2024. Frank's health had reached a breaking point after years of struggling with contamination. His body turned into too vulnerable to combat anymore. The human beings closest to him knew the give up become close to, and when the call got here, Mike failed to hesitate. He rushed to Frank's side, becoming a member of Frank's mom and a close-own family buddy. The room changed into quite heavy, with unstated words and the weight of the whole thing. They had been via for years. Matters among Frank and Mike were complicated, however, in that moment. None of it mattered. All that was left became their friendship, the actual one beyond the cameras and headlight strains. Mike later shared that he was holding Frank's hand while he took his last breath. He whispered to him, telling him he loved him, that he forgave him, that the whole lot changed into okay. And then, just like that, Frank become long past earlier than he passed. Frank's last words hung inside there, unsettling but meaningful. The beyond is in no way genuinely long gone. It's constantly withersheeding in the shadows, coming from a man who had spent his lifestyles unearthing forgotten treasures. Those words felt almost poetic. His cherished ones still think about them, questioning what was on his mind in those very last moments in step. With his dying certificates, Frank's passing become a result of complications from his stroke. On top of that, he had been fighting aortic stenosis, a circumstance that made even the simplest duties, walking respiration status, hard. His frame had been via a lot combating every step of the manner, but in the give-up it simply could not keep on any longer, however, whilst his passing marked the quit of an era. What became determined in his property afterward turned into so surprising that even the ones closest to him may want to rarely accept as true with it. You see, Frank's love for motorcycles was no mystery. However, what few found out was simply how tremendous histories had turned out to be after his passing, while the doorways to his personal storage had been eventually opened. What became inside bowled over even individuals who knew him, nice row after row of antique bikes stuffed. The gap some care carefully restored, and gleaming under the lights others, covered in dust, looking ahead to their memento. Shine again, there had been rare Indian motorcycles, classic Harley-Davidson and custom choppers that had been meticulously collected through the years. Some motorcycles were fully restored, while others sat in pieces, mid-mission evidence of a passion that in no way faded for Frank. Those were not simply machines, they had been recollections, moments of journey, and a testimony to his dedication to the craft of selecting. He had traveled the country to locate them, spent years restoring them, and held onto them like treasured relics of Abagon era. The idea of them being offered off feels almost unthinkable to folks who knew how a good deal they intended to him. Yet in keeping with sources and public sales already within the works, one that will see every bike, every antique sign, and every carefully preserved piece of history go under the hammer. However, right, here's the element nobody saw coming. The proceeds may not be going into a private estate or commercial enterprise fund. Alternatively, they will be donated to charity, turning Frank's lifelong ardor into one final act of generosity.